14 clinical departments and the 2 hybrid departments that are a combination of basic science and clinical departments. One of the ways in which we support our faculty is through informational workshops like this. And I would just add that I'm happy to come to your department faculty meetings to do more informal sessions if that would be desirable. Similar to last year, we've decided to split this event into 2 separate workshops, allowing us to focus on the needs of the 2 different faculty groups. The clinical track faculty had a workshop a couple of weeks ago on November 15th, and today is devoted to academic track faculty in the research scholar, teaching scholar, and parens research tracks. I'd like to thank and recognize the groups that have made this workshop possible. So first, the Office of Biomed Faculty Administration, and especially Heather Robichaux, who has done the heavy lifting to pull this workshop off. So thank you so much, Heather. And I'd also like to thank the Office of Continuing Medical Education for their support in providing CME credits for this event. I'd like to thank our panelists and our breakout session presenters who have very graciously given of their time to share their wisdom and experiences today. And I'd also like to thank the Medical Faculty Executive Committee, or MFEC, for co-sponsoring this workshop. And now I would like to turn it over to Dr. Roy Aaron, Professor of Orthopedics and Chair of the MFEC, to talk about that committee and how it works to support our faculty. Take it away, Roy.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
All right, so I'll just introduce the Medical Faculty Executive Committee and let you know how that could participate in the promotions process. The committee is a bidirectional communication platform that represents faculty interest to the administration and that facilitates administrative communication with faculty representatives. So it's kind of works in 2 ways. We've taken on subjects this year such as birch planning, faculty recruitment and retention, bioethical issues, and we have interest in faculty promotion and equality and fairness at all levels of the process. We can also function as an arena for faculty grievances. The Medical Faculty Executive Committee is a great group interested in faculty well-being, and you're invited to reach out to any member of the committee with any concerns or suggestions. That's really all I really wanted to say, but I would offer the same thing. You can give me a call anytime. I'm sure you can call the other people on the committee, you can make them available to you, and I'll turn it back over to Shelley.
Thanks so much, Roy. And thanks to the MFEC again. It is a terrific group, and they do very, very important work. And thank you for co-sponsoring this workshop. So before I begin the PowerPoint presentation, I'd like to just sort of go over some logistics. The first hour of the workshop is being recorded, and it will be available at the Biomed Faculty Administration website shortly after this event. Please submit any questions as we go along through the chat function and address those directly to Alex Kelleher. Alex is going to be, there's Alex waving. Hello, Alex. Alex will be monitoring the chat throughout the program, and she will be able to direct those questions to our panelists when we move into the panel discussion. We're going to start the program with a general overview of the promotions process, and then that will be followed by the panel discussion, during which time, as I mentioned, there'll be ample opportunity to have the panelists address your questions. Or if any questions come up, or you could think of any questions as I'm doing the PowerPoint presentation, feel free to direct those to me during the panel discussion as well. So at this time, I would like to share my screen. And how'd we do? Did that work?
Looks great.
Okay, great. Excellent. So this is just the introductory slide, so you know where you are and that you're in the right workshop. The goals of this workshop are to provide some basic information about the faculty tracks, the promotion dossier, the promotion process, and the timeline. Our hope is that we will be able to dispel any myths that might be circulating about the promotion process. We'll be sharing tips about promotion and how to be successful, and again, answer any of your questions that you may have. Today, we'll be focusing on the 3 academic tracks: the Perens Research track, the Research Scholar track, and the Teaching Scholar track. This slide shows you how those tracks are titled. So for the Perens Research track, it is the Professor of Department X, followed by Perens Research. The Research Scholar track and Teaching Scholar tracks don't have any modifiers. This is the pie chart of our overall biomed faculty, and you can see that we have well in excess of 2,000 clinical department faculty. The tracks are represented here. Just trying to get yeah, there it is. And you can see that the largest track that we have is the clinical track with over 1,000 faculty members, followed by the clinician educator track with over 700. The teaching scholar track at 229, the research scholar track with 144, and the Perens research track with 112. The pre-track refers to faculty who are in their first term of appointment and have not yet declared whether they're going to differentiate into the research scholar or the teaching scholar track. So at the time that this slide was made, there were 83 in the pre-track. So now let's move on to the faculty track standards and criteria. So this is really looking at what are the requirements for each of the faculty tracks that we're going to be focusing on today. Now this slide looks a little busy, but it's a very high level view of what the criteria are for the various tracks. Highlighted in yellow are the 3 tracks to focus on today. So the teaching scholar, the teaching scholar, research scholar, and Perens research tracks. And then along the left-hand column, you'll see the various areas that the criteria address. And across the in the cells, you'll see at the bottom, there's a key that really identifies what is required with an R, what is positively considered with PC, what is not required with an NR, peer-reviewed is PR. And so this is how you can sort of interpret this. I should mention that this slide is also available on the Biomed Faculty Administration website, and it will be in the slides that will be on that website. So if you want to dig in and look at this a little more carefully, feel free to do so. I think the real points here are that probably there's often a lot of question about the research scholar versus Perens research tracks and how they differ. And here you can see that they are very similar in terms of what is required with the R across the cells. They both, at the associate professor rank, require a national reputation. Actually, all the tracks do. Educational leadership is not required for either of those tracks. But where the real difference occurs between research scholar and Perens research is the requirement for teaching, mentoring, and or advising excellence. The Perens research track does not require that, whereas the research scholar track does. For the teaching scholar track, the really important differences are that from the research tracks is that there's no requirement for a research program, research funding. There is a similar requirement for scholarly productivity, although scholarship is more broadly defined for the teaching scholar track. Again, a national reputation is required, and the big difference is that educational leadership is a requirement for the teaching scholar track. So this is all at the associate professor rank. This slide is demonstrating what is required at the full professor rank. And again, there's a lot of similarity between the research scholar and Perens research track. And in fact, as you go through, the only place where there's a difference at the full professor rank is in the teaching, mentoring, and or advising excellence requirement for the research scholar track, but not for Perens research. Again, the educational leadership requirement is in place for teaching scholar track. Another difference among the 3 tracks is that for the teaching scholar track, a national reputation is required, whereas for research scholar and Perens research, an international reputation is required. So this is another way to sort of drill down into the criteria and to see how they change across the ranks from associate to full professor. And here you'll see for the teaching scholar track, teaching leadership for the associate professor rank should be a major educational role, whereas at full professor, the expectation is that the faculty member would lead an educational program. Excellence and innovation as teaching is required across associate and full. And then there is a difference in the reputational requirement between the ranks. So for associate professor in the teaching scholar track, the reputation is required to be at a national level, but it can be in the area of the individual's expertise. It need not be as an educator. Whereas at the full professor rank, the national reputation must be as an educator, not simply in the area of expertise. So that is a somewhat subtle difference across the ranks. For the research scholar track, you can see that, again, research is required at both ranks, whereas independent or collaborative research program is required at the associate professor rank. At the full professor rank, the contribution to any collaborative research should be substantive and distinct. So that's, again, a little subtle difference. The reputation changes from national to international between associate and full, and otherwise things pretty much remain constant across the ranks. For the Perens research track, it's very similar to the research scholar with regard to the expectations at the full professor rank for research. The national reputation moves to an international reputation at full professor. And again, teaching, advising, and mentoring is not a requirement, but is positively considered. There will be a new criterion that will be implemented in July of 2024, and all of you probably received or should have received, if you were appointed at the time, an email from the Biomed Faculty Administration Office announcing this a couple of years ago. This was a recommendation that was recommended by a working group and approved by biomed advisory bodies in 2021. The criterion is that at all faculty ranks and in all tracks, there must be a demonstrated commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if you have questions about this, I would direct you to the Biomed Faculty Administration website, where you can find an example of metrics for DEI activities in all of the various areas of focus. So now let's move on to the components of your promotion dossier. I think as you start to think about this, it may feel as if you're putting a lot of paper together. I can reassure you and probably dispel that myth that if you have this much paper, it's only because you have a very lengthy CV, because otherwise there really isn't that much that goes into the dossier. And as we moved into completely electronic dossiers, we actually have no paper. But some people do have very long CVs. So who's responsible for what in the promotion dossier? So on the left, you can see what you are responsible for as the candidate going up for promotion. You are responsible for an updated curriculum vitae. You're responsible for your personal statement, for compiling evaluations of your teaching, advising, or mentoring, and a list of suggested referees. The department on the right is responsible for letters from the chair and division chiefs that are in support of your promotion. It's also responsible for a department promotions committee report. The sample letter that was sent out to referees soliciting letters of references, the actual referee letters that were submitted, both those that were requested from the list of compiled by the department, as well as those that you suggested as referees. And again, evaluations that are available that you may not have access to, but the department has access to. So the CV is the biggest part of your dossier for sure. and you want to have it be in a format that is easily reviewed by referees as well as promotion committee members. So the overarching message in terms of a tip for your putting your CV together is to think about how you can make a reviewer's job as easy as possible. So absolutely use the Brown format. There really is no other way to do it. So use the Brown format. It's very high level, and so you can customize it within that overall template, but definitely find that Brown format for a CV on the Biomed Faculty Administration website. Highlight your name on publications. That makes it easier for referees to see where you are on the author list. And if it's important for your track and the work that you do, to really look to see, how many publications you were first authored on and how many senior authors. Absolutely include information about any grants that you have, including the granting agency, your role on the grant, the dollar amount, and the years of the grant as well. Separate your presentations into local, regional, national, and international. This is something that probably is the place where I see that faculty often don't do this. And this is really to your disadvantage, because there may be conferences that you've participated in that are local, so they were held at Brown, but actually are national conferences. So if you don't separate those conferences into the geographic region, the reach, then the reviewers won't know that was a national or even international conference that you participated in. Organize your professional organization activities, listing your role. It's a nice way to demonstrate how you have gotten more involved in a professional society or organization, which really speaks to your developing regional and national and international reputation. I highly recommend that you get feedback from your colleagues, certainly your division chief, the promotion committee for your department, and the chair of your department on your CV and how you might make it better. And review a CV of a recently promoted faculty member if they're willing to share it. I think that can be very instructive, particularly where they might have customized their CV to really demonstrate the work that they do in a particular area within the Brown format, but having subheadings may be very, very useful for you. We no longer require a teaching dossier, a teaching portfolio for the teaching scholar track. It was a requirement a number of years ago. But I highly recommend that you include as much detail about your teaching, advising, and mentoring as you can possibly provide. And you can do that as a section in your CV. So record all of that that you do in teaching, advising, and mentoring. Give your role in a course or rotation, include the dates and the numbers and types of learners if you can. List any advisees and mentees that you've had, certainly any teaching, advising, or mentoring awards that you've received. Scholarship resulting from your interactions with learners and trainees. A lot of faculty highlight names of mentees and trainees and students in their publications where they've worked with them. Certainly include any curricula that developed, particularly if it's been disseminated, or if it's been published. That can definitely be considered scholarship as well. And then again, evaluations, and particularly if you've done presentations at conferences for professional organizations and you've received feedback from the course directors, include that in your CV as well, or with your dossier as well. Again, the research components, list all of the original peer-reviewed publications that have come out of your research, give all of these details with regard to your research grants, and include the names of any research trainees with whom you've worked. The compiling teaching evaluations can sometimes feel onerous. And so I highly recommend that you do it in real time if you can. It has been better since the student and GME programs are now electronic evaluations, so you should be able to more easily access them. For students, the Oasis is the platform, and for GME programs, it's either New Innovations or eValue. And again, include any evaluations from invited presentations or evaluations letters that you might have received from advisees and mentees. If you are having problems getting your teaching evaluations, don't hesitate to ask program administrators, the people who work in the clerkships, the residencies, fellowships, and in CME may be able to help you pull those together. Probably the most controversial part of the dossier as to what it should be is the personal statement. And when I look at promotion dossiers, this is where there's the most variability. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer now that this is my personal opinion about personal statements, and you may be told otherwise by your department. So, feel free to take the advice of your department and just ignore my advice. But the personal statement that I find most useful is one that is essentially a biographical essay, one that tells the story of your career path, and particularly tells the story of what may not be clear from your CV. So explain, again, the things that I might not glean from your CV. It should be kept brief, so definitely keep it within 2 pages, and that doesn't mean lowering the font so that people with presbyopia could never be able to read it, like me. So definitely keep it as brief as possible. And when you put your personal statement together, remember what your track is. So, as you are putting it together, and if you're on the teaching scholar track, then you're going to want to talk about teaching and about education, and help the reader understand who you are and what gives you joy in your career. And I hope that will be in alignment with the faculty track you're on. Certainly present your goals and your aspirations and how you hope to realize them. Again, remember what your faculty track is. So if you're on the teaching scholar track, or be presumed that your goals would be in education. If you're on a research track, they would be in research. And if the last word of advice is just remember your track. Referee letters are, very important in your CV. Their purpose is to provide an objective and unbiased assessment of how you meet Brown's promotion criteria, what your reputation is, whether it's regional, national, or international as a researcher or an educator in your field, and the likelihood that you would be promoted at the referee's institution. So that is a specific question that we ask. Referees should be at arm's length. So when you put together your suggested referees for your promotion, they should not be people who have been your mentors or your mentees with whom you've had a very close working relationship. It shouldn't be anybody in your family. They should be somebody who could provide a more objective review. They can be people that you have collaborated on with, in regard to research or on papers or in professional organizations. Those are probably the ideal individuals, but they should be a little bit at arm's length. They must be at your promotion rank or higher. And for the academic tracks, all of the referee letters need to be outside of Brown. So if you're going for associate, they need to be at associate or full. And if you're going for full professor, they must be at full professor rank. The referees might not know you, but they are provided with your dossier to review, and they're provided with the Brown criteria so they can really assess whether you meet the criteria. The promotion timeline can feel very long, but I liken this to making sourdough bread. That the entire process takes a long time, but the time during which you are actually active in the process is relatively short. The thing that takes the longest time, and our department promotion committee chairs, I'm sure, will attest to this, is soliciting and receiving the referee letters. That's what takes the most time. And so there may be months during which they're waiting for those letters to be returned, and yet you are not active during that time. So what are the steps in this process? So the first step is that you as the candidate and your division chief or department chair decide if it's the right time for your promotion. And that would typically happen in your annual review, although it can happen outside of your annual review. You would then be informed of the departmental deadlines and start to prepare your promotion documents. You would have a preliminary departmental review by the promotion committee, and then the promotion committee or the department chair would inform you about going forward for the promotion, and that's the point at which you would be sure to update everything and pull your dossier together. The steps are in the process beyond that is that the department then solicits the referee letters for you as the candidate. When they are received, the Department Promotion Committee reviews the completed dossier, makes recommendations to the chair of the department. So the Promotion Committee votes and then recommends to the department chair. At that point, the department submits the completed dossier to the Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotions. And so that's in Biomed Faculty Administration. And then finally, that committee reviews the dossier and votes on promotions. For the tracks, the teaching scholar and research scholar tracks, there are term limits at the associate professor rank that you should know about. For those two tracks, there are three-year terms at the assistant professor rank, and promotion review needs to be done 1 year before the end of that third 3-year term, although it can be done right up in that last year of that term if you as the candidate waive a notice and can be reviewed in that final year. So there is an opportunity to move it into that 9th year. Term extensions are allowed, and you are allowed to have up to 3 1-year term extensions during those 3-year terms. The request for an extension should be submitted within a year of whatever that event might be. So it might have been a medical leave. It might have been a change in your research focus. It might have been the departure of a mentor or a change. So let me just say that I am the one who reviews those requests for extensions, and I don't think I have ever denied a request. So I think just about anything could warrant an extension, but the request does have to come in within a year of the event that you're suggesting would delay your promotion. If you have had something happen in a term, my recommendation is to request the extension. You don't have to use it. So there's no worry that you're going to have to extend your time to promotion, but you would have that 1-year extension in the bank. So I would highly recommend requesting it. We did grant 1-year automatic extensions to all faculty at the assistant professor rank in the teaching scholar and research scholar tracks in 2020 because of the pandemic. And I would just highly recommend that any of you who feel as if you've had further delays in your progress, just request another extension for sure, because the pandemic is, the gift that keeps giving. And so it's likely that many of you may need to have extensions beyond that. So who are the members of the Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotions, or CMFA? Well, there are 8 members of the committee. All of them have to be at the full professor rank, either in a medical academic track, or if they're campus-based faculty, they have to be tenured faculty. The committee members serve a 3-year term. There are 5 that come from the clinical departments, 1 from a biology department, one of our 4 biology departments, 1 from the School of Public Health, and 1 from another university department. And so that could be somebody from chemistry, we've had folks from archaeology, from history. So as you're thinking about helping reviewers with your dossier, with your CV, just think about the fact that not all of the reviewers are actually in medicine. So that's just something to keep in mind. The committee reviews all senior level promotions and appointments in the clinical departments throughout the academic year. We do not meet during the summer because of campus-based faculty, maybe going hither and yon to do other work. All the committee members read all of the dossiers and they formulate questions for the department chair. So we don't assign your dossier to just one committee member. Every committee member reviews every dossier, and we have an open discussion of how you meet the criteria, and any questions that we may have that we want to have the chair address. After we have a discussion, then we invite the department chair in. The department chair presents you as a candidate, and then answers any of the questions that we may have considered during our discussion. Once that happens, then a vote is taken, and then a recommendation is made. So this is just the whole timeline of the approval process. So it starts with the Department Promotion Committee, the chair. It then moves on to CMFA. Once CMA takes a vote, then we make that recommendation to the Dean of Biology and Medicine. That's the point at which the chair is informed that the committee has voted to approve your promotion, and the department chair can contact you and let you know that the recommendation from the committee will be approval, with the caveat that it then needs to be reviewed by the dean and the provost. Once the dean and provost recommend, actually review the recommendations, then it goes on to the university president. That is the point at which you would get a letter from Biomed Faculty Administration indicating that, pending the vote by the corporation, which is anticipated to be consistent with the recommendation, that you would be promoted to and then giving your faculty title. Usually it is that becomes effective on July 1st of the next academic, or if you're in the academic year, the beginning of the next academic year. So July 1st, in this case, it would be July 1st, 2024. We have had some circumstances where people are reviewed in the fall semester, and we will occasionally backdate a promotion to July 1st of the year before, particularly if we were unable to get you on to the agenda during the academic year, and even though your dossier may have been compiled. So that is the end of the PowerPoint presentation. I hope that you have put any questions that you might have in the chat so that we can review those during our panel discussion. And so now we are going to move on to the panel discussion. And first, I'd like to, again, thank our panelists for joining us and for sharing their wisdom during this period of time. Vilma Cortez is one of our panelists, and she is a relatively new manager of academic affairs for Biomed Faculty Administration. Vilma joined us in July of 2023. So thanks so much, Vilma, for your first panel discussion.
Thank you.
Next is Tony Caldamone. And Tony is professor of surgery and professor of pediatrics, and is also the Department Promotion Committee chair. Hi, Tony.
Hi,
Jennifer,
thanks for having me.
yeah, Jennifer Friedman, professor of pediatrics and professor of epidemiology. Jen was a former CMFA member, but also is now chairing the promotions committee for pediatrics. Correct, Jen? I got that right. Yeah, okay. And Deb Myers, professor of obstetrics and gynecology and vice chair of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And she's also a Department Promotion Committee chair. Hey, Deb, thank you. All right, so I am going to kick it off with our panelists. First, ask you to tell us.
Kelly, I'm sorry for interrupting. Can you just stop sharing your screen just so everyone can see? Sorry.
Of course, yeah, silly me. I'm just the kind of person who wants to share all the time.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
just
you.
very generous. So there. So first, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves as to how you interact with the promotions process and have done so over the years, and then also give us 1 or 2 tips that you would like to share with the faculty as to how they can be most successful in promotion. And I am going to start with Deb, if that's okay.
Sure. Evening, everybody. Thank you. For me, I've been overseeing promotions and the Department of OB/GYN probably for about 10 years now. And in terms of the committee and faculty, we don't have as maybe large of a group as some of the other departments. So we really have done a lot of one-on-one mentoring, really. People are pretty much aware of promotions, within the department and can seek, out appointments. And it will also come up at the annual review every year as well. What about promotions? But people will also seek out information as well. So we pretty much have a one-on-one relationship. We advertise these kinds of workshops as well. In terms of promotion, I know that on the website, there's like a self-help profile type of quiz that a person can take. I don't know the exact website address. So that's something we often recommend to the candidate to go on, look at criteria, see if they feel like they're ready or not. But I also find that the biggest thing is that CV, as you have mentioned, keeping that updated, keeping that organized, and keeping it readable for reviewers, organizing it so you don't have a laundry list of 100 things where someone will have difficulty just trying to read through what is going on, but organizing it as you have outlined. So keeping that CV updated and organized in a very readable fashion, I think is very important. The other thing which I often try to talk about is try and find out the candidate's personal interest, as well as where they spend a lot of their time and what work they do. And a lot of people find their own niche, and that is something that I often encourage a person to promote, not only in terms of teaching and in terms of lectures and education, but also to gain reputation. And so trying to find the work that's already done, and then trying to either, I call it package it or build it to take it on the road, so to speak, is what I usually tell people. So there's a couple things there that I often utilize. You're muted, Shelley.
I think you're talking about the self-assessment form.
Yes.
That's on biomed faculty.
Yeah.
Maybe Alex could put that in the chat for people, because I do think that is very, very useful. So thanks, Deb. I am now going to turn it over to Jen Friedman.
Thanks so much. So I became involved with promotions, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, as first a member and then associate chair with Penny Dennehy, who was a great mentor in that role, and now chair that committee with Betty Vort for pediatrics. I also served on CMFA for a number of years, so had the opportunity to learn from that committee about what we look for and how we sort of think about metrics and sort of, checking the boxes to make sure that candidates are on target and really ready for promotion. One thing I would say is that promotions committees within your departments also know those criteria very well and really are great ways to get advice in terms of your own readiness and what to do in addition to your own division directors and department chairs. So department promotion committees have a wealth of information and really like to work with you to make sure you're ready and give advice along the way. If you feel like you need help, say you're midway through a track and want to know what's missing, what to work on, what to focus on, I think they're really great resources for that. Pediatrics has, in the past 5 or 6 years, taken to looking at people about halfway, midway through their track and rank as our promotion committee. So that's a lot of the work that we do, and then giving feedback to those folks. So I would say lean on your promotions committee members. And if you don't know who that is, you should know who that is. Reach out to your mentors and chairs. The other thing I would say is one thing that can be very difficult to think about along the way as you're doing the work that you do is the issue of reputation. So national reputation, other reputations that you need as you go up for promotion. But I would really encourage people to get involved with your own national committees. For one thing, I think it gets you out of the day-to-day here. It connects you outside the institution. And it's a very good way to sort of point to reputation. So not sort of what we call dues paying. I'm a member of the AAP or whatever your equivalent is in medicine or other departments, but that you really get involved in national committees with and I think most people are surprised to find that those committees are always looking for new members and help. You can join as a committee member. Often you then take on a leadership role. And that's a very good way to point to that, and also, again, connects you to something that hopefully you're passionate about. And other ways to do that, if you have a mentor or division director or chair who may do similar work, asking them to recommend you to review manuscripts, so editorial roles that they may be too busy to take on, and also grant review and other committees like that for folks in the research scholar track in particular, and the Friends research track.
Great, thanks, Jen. Always good advice. So, Tony.
Well, thanks, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I think this is a very productive session. It always has been in the past. I was on CMFA many, many years ago, and then I took over the role of the chair of the promotions committee for the Department of Surgery about 7 years ago now, I think. And I've learned a lot in this particular position. But what I enjoy about it the best is that it gives me an opportunity to show a lot of people off. Otherwise having been stuck in pediatric urology, a very, very small little group of people, all my career, this really broadened my eyes to what's really out there as far as our faculty is concerned. And I love that. I love having that charge, if you will. I tend to meet with new faculty when they come on, so they have an idea of where we're moving in terms of the timeline and what the metrics are that we're looking for. I meet within a couple of years of those that we are thinking about promoting promotion. And in that role, what we do is where we generate our list is that we meet with each of the division chiefs once a year and generate the list from there, and then work with the faculty that the division chiefs, being in surgery, we have a number of different divisions, and the division chiefs know the faculty the best. And that's where we pull our list to work with. If I were to make one emphasis on Shelley's presentation, one area that I think that gets overlooked a lot is mentoring. And the reason it gets overlooked is very understandable, because we do it like a curbside consult almost, you don't even think about it and you don't record it. And it's awfully difficult to go back and backfill it when someone asks you what your mentoring is. But you think about things that you do all the time. You spend some time with a medical student, or you spend some time with a resident on their grand rounds presentations, or sometimes you're asked to spend some time with residents on remediation or career planning or whatever it might be. Jot it down, just the name, the status of the individual, medical student, resident, fellow, postdoc, whatever it might be, the nature of the mentoring, and just maybe a year, just something like that. It's all it really takes. But it's awfully hard to backfill when someone asks you to do it later. And it's good to keep a record of those, but it's so easy to overlook. And then finally, one other point that I see is that we don't really have a place in the Brown formatted CV for invited publications. So we have peer review, we have non-peer review. Invited publications, I think, are very, very important. I think in my mind, they carry a lot of weight, because clearly not only have you published something in a peer-reviewed journal most of the time as a result of being invited, but it speaks to a recognized expertise in a certain area. And I think that should be not overlooked. So those are the points I'd like to make.
Great, thanks, Tony. Yeah, and with regard to mentoring and advising, we added those in the criteria a number of years ago, that it wasn't just excellence in teaching, but it could be excellence in advising and or mentoring. And I think that was an important change, and a reason for sure to include, to the extent that you can, all your advisees and mentees in your documents. So now I am going to ask Vilma Cortez Jasan to introduce herself and to tell us how you have been working on the promotions process, Vilma, in your role as manager of academic affairs.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Your departments actually shared your dossiers with me, so I am the first point of reviewer, if you would like to say. And I would say the importance of using the Brown CV template, like it was mentioned before. We encourage faculty to use the Brown CV because it's important information that should be included in the CV, and it's also important because the materials and sections are in a consistent flow, which allows the different channels of reviewers to have fewer questions, and also because the information is more accessible. And I would say perhaps the personal statement, the CMFA members can get to really know you, your interests, and your goals. So, yes.
Thank you, Vilma. And Vilma's been a great addition to BMFA, and she is definitely the first point of contact. And I don't even see what happens, but I suspect that Vilma goes back and forth with the department administrators on a fairly regular basis to make sure that your dossiers are absolutely pristine when we post them for the CMFA members. So thanks, Vilma. So now I am going to introduce Alex Kelleher, who is the Director of Biomed Faculty Administration. Hi, Alex.
Hello, everybody.
And so Alex has been monitoring the chat, and I'm going to ask her to toss us some questions.
Absolutely. Yes. So we're already starting to get some questions both to our whole group and also directly to me. And everybody feel free to continue sending them in as our conversation progresses over the next little bit. So one kind of general question that we got right at the start is, why should I get promoted? And what are the benefits to promotion?
All right. Deb had the most.
That was me too. I was going to say the same thing. Go ahead, Shelley.
I was going to say Deb had the most dramatic reaction. So I'm sorry, we have that delay in Zoom. But
I do get that question often though, like, why should I bother? Kind of thing. And I mean, I think it's a personal thing. I mean, maybe in some departments you get a little extra bonus bump in pay or something. I don't know. Used to be, probably not anymore. But for me, I think it's a personal decision. I've had this discussion with many other people, and for some, it's not really a title, and they're active and involved in many other different ways, committee leadership, hospital committees, and find their strengths there. For other people though, who are teaching, I think actively teaching, and publishing in that, I think it's a validation of your own personal achievements. That's how I see it. And I think it's recognition of what you do. And I think it's recognition for your hospital or your institution as well. So, that's what I tell people. So, and why.
Anybody else want to give their view of this?
The only thing I would add to that is that sometimes it's department specific, in that it may affect things in terms of your relationship with the department. I'm not saying salary necessarily, but your relationship to the department, rewards that come with protected time for doing what you do, showing that you're indeed using that protected time effectively. So I think it's a question that not only should be addressed with the promotions committee, but also with your department chairs or your division chairs, as I think it can be very, very specific and granular at that level.
Yeah, I would just add, I hope that departments really celebrate this, because most people know this is a lot of work to get to that. So I think internally people are surprised at how they're recognized and how that makes them feel. Brown has always done a really nice event at the medical school to recognize everyone. And I would also just add, outside our institution, that other academic institutions as well understand what that means. So what does that mean to be an associate professor now in an academic track? Is really, I think, something that people really seek out and really kind of value and respect. So I think there's also that external piece too.
Great. Fizza, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add a small comment here for this answer. When you go do any international work, your title or rank is so important. I can give you hundreds of examples of that, but your title is very important for any international work. So getting promotion is the first thing we should be aiming for in our work.
And is it okay, Fizza, that I mention where you are, speaking of international work?
Sure.
Fizza is actually joining us from Pakistan, and it's 2:30, 3 o'clock. What is it, 3 in the morning?
Almost 3 in the morning. And just small example of my title. I am leading a large HIV awareness and education program in Pakistan. So 2-3 years ago, I was trying to meet a person who was a vice chancellor of a medical school. She simply refused to meet me because I was assistant professor at that time.
Okay.
So just keep this in mind. For international work, we have to do this. We have to work more.
Very
we have to
good
get.
point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Thank you. All right, Alex, back to you.
Okay. A question about referee letters. So finding the required number of referees at arm's length seems like a daunting task. Does anybody on the panel have any recommendations for soliciting referees for promotion?
So one thing I would say is that when we say arm, I wouldn't think of this as someone that you would like sort of ask to write a letter of recommendation for you. Often it's someone that doesn't know you at all, actually. And the department's chosen them in part because we feel like based on their area of expertise, their job is really to read your CV, look at our metrics, and then comment. And I would also just add that there's a really nice option now that someone doesn't have to write a whole 2-page letter, which used to be a big barrier to getting these letters back. Brown has a really nice, almost like a series of, do they meet this metric? Do they meet this? Yes, no, and a little bit of supporting. So it's a little bit easier. So often that person may not know you at all. When we ask you for potential referees, obviously it's nice if it's someone who knows your work a little bit better. They may be a little bit more motivated to do that for you. But again, they do have to be at arm's length, but I don't think you need to feel like 12, 15 people in your field out there that know you well and are writing you a big letter of recommendation per se.
Great. Deb?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you, the candidate, don't need 12 names. You need maybe 5 or 6. The committee will come up with the other 5, 6 names. So you are not responsible yourself for 12. It's more like 5 or 6. If you are working already on a national level, and this is where the professional society and committee work comes into play, becomes helpful, is that you've worked with people on a committee for, I don't know, public relations or something, and you may not have written a paper with them. They know who you are, but you don't really have a direct, like, ongoing working relationship all the time. That would be kind of the person who you would maybe recommend. They know who you are a little bit. They've seen you work some, but they're not like writing 12 book chapters with you, that kind of thing. So those I find, and also a geographic spread is something else I try to recommend to people as well, if possible. Not all Boston, Rhode Island, that kind of thing.
Great.
Yeah, the only thing
sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Actually, the only thing I would add is that make sure there are people who can speak to either a national or an international reputation, if indeed those are criteria in the particular track that you're in particular rank that you're in as well.
I know that some editors of journals will also write you a letter if you've been a reviewer for that journal and have done a good job. So that's another way that you might get referees. I've recommended to faculty that when there are visiting professors in your department, that you try to schedule a meeting with that individual and even, ask them if they might at some point be willing to be a referee, because most of them are more than happy to do that, particularly with the template, right, Jen?
Yes.
All right, Alex.
All right. A question about collecting evaluations. So specifically for the Parens research track, in order to collect evaluations from undergrads, master's students, PhD students, medical students, etc., what format should we use for that Parens research track?
Well,
We've had some people in our lab group just ask that individual to write a brief letter and say, they can even address it to, your department administrator or chair with respect to the mentoring role you've played with them, the impact you've had on their career, formally, informally. What gets a little hard is whether they're still with your group or not, and asking someone that. Ideally, it's someone who you've mentored and who has left. Sometimes that's harder if it's like a PhD student who's with you for a while or a postdoc, but it might be a little bit easier if they've left the group so they don't feel sort of pressured or conflicted. And if they're not, if you can also say you can send it anonymously to or confidentially to my department administrator if they're more comfortable with that.
That's what we see most often, I think, on CMFA. I would say that Department of Psychiatry, if anybody's from psychiatry, may confirm this or not. I think has a mentoring evaluation form that they have. And at one point we had talked about putting it on the BMFA website, just if individuals wanted to use that.
Great. Okay. Another question that we have received is with in the thought of preparing, excuse me, for the rollout of the DEI metrics for next year. How can I best prepare for reporting on my DEI work? And how can I think about what counts as DEI work?
And I can start just because we haven't implemented it, and it is a recommendation. It is going to be implemented in July. What we are telling people is to certainly go to the Biomed Faculty Administration website and look at those metrics that the working group established. And there are examples of how you would meet the criterion in the clinical sphere, in teaching, in research. What we're seeing now is even in advance of that criterion being fully implemented, faculty who are coming up for promotion now are really showing the work that they're doing in DEI, and they're doing it in a variety of ways. Some of them have a separate section in their CV. Some have been putting it into their personal statement as well. Some have been sort of highlighting it throughout their CV where it falls in other sections. So we're not suggesting that you do it any particular way, whatever seems to make the most sense for you. But I would definitely recommend looking at the metrics. We have encouraged departments to establish their own metrics that might be more specific to the field. So that's something that you may want to check in with your department on.
And I just dropped into the chat so everybody can see it, the link to our standards and criteria page, which also includes those metrics.
Great. Deb, I think, raised her hand.
I was just going to mention that I have seen CVs now coming through where someone has done a research, project, and it included DEI work, and they'll put an asterisk or something to kind of denote that this was, within the DEI framework. So I see that now. We see lectures, things like that, in a variety of categories.
Yeah, and some people have pulled that information out into a separate section, so it's duplicated in the CV. But we're totally cool with that. That's fine. Great.
Great. Just a follow-up question on that. We do have one other overarching question I'm hoping we can get to, but just to keep on topic. Are the suggested modifications to the Brown CV template, adding a DEI section, highlighting invited articles, etc., acceptable?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that the overall format has to be in the Brown, but you can have subtitles, subheadings, subcategories, break things out, add sections to your CV. It's just that, we need to be able to find sort of that core information within the CV with the Brown format.
And if everybody's amenable, there's one final question that hopefully should be a relatively direct answer. So how often are promotions declined by Brown after they receive the support or blessing from the department?
I think I've got to take that one, right? I think that's mine. So very infrequently. That is my initial answer. So the committee, and I just want to emphasize this, that all along the way, as you're being reviewed in your department, and then you're reviewed, at the medical school, everybody wants you to be promoted. I mean, we are not serving a gatekeeper function. We are not trying to keep you from being promoted. So having said that, at the department level, there's there may be give and take in terms of, when you go up for promotion, depending on what track you're in. Sometimes departments decide that you're not in the right track, that you may need to move into a different track. So that work happens at the department level. And so by the time you come to CMFA for review, there have been a lot of opportunities for changes to be made so that you can be successful if that's necessary. So it is very infrequent. And I would say if you really want a number, it's probably one action per year. And the number of actions, Vilma, how many do we have this year? 80 some?
102. Yeah.
102, I'm
sure.
sorry, it's a growth industry this year. So 102. So it's very infrequent. Typically, what the committee tries to do is rather than deny the promotion, to go back to the department chair and then, ultimately the department chair work with the candidate to see, if they want to change tracks, because it may be that you're in the wrong track. You want to change tracks or delay. So we often will table a decision if there's concern that it won't be approved, to give the candidate and the department an opportunity to rework it. Sometimes, it might be that we feel as if this person has met the criterion, but we just don't see it organized in the way that we'd like to see it organized in their dossier. They haven't presented the work that they've done as well as they could have. And so that's another opportunity for individuals to rework their CV, to write an addendum, and then we would re-review the action. So it's very infrequent. We really, we all work to approve the promotion. Great. So is that a wrap, Alex?
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap. So I want to thank all of our panelists so much for being on the panel and providing your tips and expertise. I also want to thank our participants for your questions. So this is really the end of the first part of our promotions workshop. We will not be recording from here on out, and we will be moving into the breakout sessions. So the breakout sessions are, do I need to put up a slide, or can I just say it, Heather? I think I can just say
Yeah,
it.
you can just say it. I'm creating them right now, and then a notification will be sent out to everyone to let folks self-select into their breakout session.
Okay, great. So the Research Scholar Track session will be co-facilitated by Gada Borgelli, Gada, wave, and John McGeary. John, I think you're there. Yeah, great. The Perens Research Track session will be co-facilitated by Fiza Galani and Daphne Coynes-Mitchell. And the Teaching Scholar Track session by Rebecca Gardner and Rana Rosenfield. Hello, thank you. So if you can self-select the breakout session that you would like to join. And if you are uncertain about which session you should join, then stay in the Zoom room and BMFA staff will help get you to the place you need to go. Through the magic of Zoom, they will do that.
Mm.
So thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.